I really had to do a lot of inner child work so that I could get to the place to where I could remember who I was, because I knew who I was at 6 years old, but forgot all of that.
I started to realize that in my healing journey, that I often was operating in this trauma self, this trauma pain body, but I started to see what my true self was underneath that as I began doing the healing work.
When we're in that trauma, we can't honor any of that wisdom. We can't give words to it. And so one of the things that I think really begins to give birth on that trauma journey, when you start to separate from just being stuck in that wheel, is to really, one, give so much love to those versions of us that survive.
It wasn't until I worked with somebody who identified those things as trauma or wounding. It was like a light bulb moment, and I just went boom. And then all the memories floated back. And I thought, wow, isn't this fascinating how I have spent my entire life searching for what was wrong with me?
You come out and you're kind of like nothing, and then everybody puts their imprint on you. And so you become your environment. So if you're in an abusive environment, you become shaped by that, and that defines who you are. But when I started reading ancient myths and I was introduced to some spiritual concepts, it really just lightened my heart so much to think of that I had chosen this life.
I think it's not a case of trying to refine who you were, but perhaps adding on to that and accepting who you are now.
Hey everyone, it's Sophia from Sacred You. Thank you so much for being here. A quick message before we dive into today's discussion. You may have been watching our videos, but have not had a chance to hit that subscribe button. So if you have gained value from our conversations, from our channel, it would be so appreciated for us if you would hit that subscribe button below right now and even give us a like. What that means is not only does it allow us to grow our subscriber base, but it also allows us to bring in even more guests for you to listen to. And you will be one of the first ones to be notified. So please hit that subscribe button and let's get started on today's wonderful panel discussion.
Welcome, everyone. I am Tywanah Yvette, and I am here with Sacred You and all of these beautiful women. And we are here to talk about rebuilding after ruin, healing from abuse, and finding your true self. When I tell you this is going to be a powerful discussion, but I want to get right to it. So again, I'm Tywanah Yvette. I am your facilitator for the evening. Jessie, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Jessie Hartnett. I work with smokers to quit smoking by getting out of their head and into their heart. And I'm coming from New Mexico in the United States. And I'm just really thrilled to be here and love my experience with Sacred You.
Awesome. Joanne?
Hello, everybody. Joanne Irwin here from way down under in Australia, northern New South Wales, call it the land of milk and honey. And I'm part of Sacred You community. I've been a part of the community running tribes for a couple of years now, Empower You. And I work with women to heal all things, and specifically through anxiety and overwhelm that shows up, which I believe is all trauma related at some level. So it's just been amazing to collaborate here, and I'm excited about this discussion, and I think it's huge, and I think we're going to go a little deep today. So
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Brooke.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here with all of you. I am Brooke Deanne. I'm in Arizona, so I'm in the beautiful desert. Right now it's about 107, I think, so it's a little spicy today. But I am really here to honor, those that have survived abuse. And I am an RTT therapist and a trauma coach. I really help women break free from the cycles of abuse and childhood trauma so that they can build a healthy relationship not only with others, but really truly with themselves so they can be their true self and really flourish.
Awesome. Michelle.
Hello, I'm Michelle Holling-Brooks, and I'm in Virginia in the US. And so it's all nice and spicy and hot here too as well, but it's a different kind of heat. But yeah, so I've been working in the field of trauma recovery and coaching and really reclaiming yourself after trauma separates you, building that bridge back of connection. And I work with anywhere from kiddos into adults. And I started a foundation called Unbridled Change back in 2008. That really, this is our mission and this is our point, is to be able to provide that sacred space for you to come home to you and to come home to living your life, wanting to live your life, step one, then learning how to love your life and yourself and giving that back, and then eventually really being able to lead that life that feels authentic to you and not necessarily that conditioned version of you that we're going to be talking about this evening. So yeah, that's what I love doing, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
I love it. And I did not mention that I am a spiritual midwife and a trauma recovery facilitator. I work with women to find their purpose, step into their power, and reclaim their lives, take it back, and be their authentic selves without guilt, shame, or any of those other emotions that can sometimes come or often come with trauma and abuse. And I myself am a trauma and abuse survivor. So we're going to start our questioning. Brooke, how do you begin to separate who you truly are from the identity shaped by your trauma?
It's a great question. I think you first have to start getting really curious with yourself. And that takes some presence, right? And some ability to slow down enough to say, can I ask myself some more deep questions like, is this thought or is this belief or is this behavior coming from my truth of who I am? Or is it coming from fear, or is it coming from somebody told me I was or who I was supposed to be? And this is just kind of starting to get that awareness around what the trauma self really is. And the trauma self is that reactive or protective, disconnected part of yourself that is just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And that's the part, when I started to realize that in my healing journey, that I often was operating in this trauma self, this trauma pain body, but I started to see what my true self was underneath that as I began doing the healing work. My true self could be the more grounded, the more present self, where I could actually even find peace in my body. But that didn't just come overnight. That was some work, right? That just so you know, this is not about like, this is going to happen overnight. This is doing a lot of that work to be able to even have the self-awareness around this. And then also being able to see where my nervous system was at. Was I still running, right? Was I still frozen in time? And that was often the case for myself. So I like people just to know that this takes some time, some consistency, and some discipline, but that it is possible.
Wonderful. I love your response. I love your response. Quinn is come in. Quinn, would you mind introducing
Hello.
yourself?
I'm Quinn. I run Clinic Support, which is virtual assistance and content creation business. But my background, I was a victim of human trafficking for 15 years. So that has really shaped my identity and changed who I was. And I think, just adding on from the previous question, I think it's not a case of trying to find refined who you were, but perhaps adding on to that and accepting who you are now, I think has really been big for me. So trying to find that middle ground. So I love the beach, as you can see in the background. However, it is absolutely freezing today. I do a lot of crochet and sewing, and I think that is I have a strong interest in the brain and how it can heal itself. And so that has really shown me that healing is possible, but it's also given me tools that allow me to do sewing and other repetitive things that I know are helping, the hippocampus and regenerating all those essential bits of the brain that process trauma.
Sending you so much love and honoring you today for being here, Quinn. Thank you. Michelle, how do you begin to separate who you truly are from the identity shaped by your trauma?
I think that is a beautiful question. And just as Brooke and Quinn were saying, it is that curiosity, but it's also allowing ourselves to really see the wonder and the strength that came through that trauma, right? That came from that ability of just how amazing and adaptive we are and we can be, that our mind can shift and change and adapt. Our body can shift and change how it talks to us. And we can kind of build walls in our system that allow us to compartmentalize so that we can continue to survive where we're at, and kind of appease that world while at the same time protecting that core self, right? And bringing that forward. And so one of the things that I know for me, I had such an identity issue with the traumatized versions of me and the ones that kind of like came out like a warrior afterwards. And then what is the one that is going to be that one that has more presence, the one that has the ability to access my heart's wisdom, that can honor my body's wisdom of what is a healthy flight response, what is a healthy, fight, like this is for me to take my stand in a healthy way. And what would that look like? What would that feel like? What would that sound like? And to stop, in my first part of my journey, I fought my nervous system. It was the thing that was just abandoning me all over the place. It was going up and out of control, and I was getting dived in, and I was like, oh, I need to control it. And then I was like, oh, it's giving me cues that I've never been able to honor, to be with. And so I think one of the things that really started to realize is when we're in that trauma, we can't honor any of that wisdom. We can't give words to it. We can't raise our hand and say, I have a question or a confusion. And so one of the things that I think really begins to give birth on that trauma journey, when you start to separate from just being stuck in that wheel, is to really, one, give so much love to those versions of us that survive and release that shame like you were talking about before. And then two, really start to get curious about what is the messaging that's coming in, and can I lovingly challenge that and start to be in it? And that to me is a huge place that starts to really recognize the strengths. I love post-traumatic growth. I love the whole research around that, because it really is, there's some huge strengths. We don't want to quote throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we do want to start to allow ourselves to be current, to update, like Quinn was saying, to be current time with who am I being right now and who do I want to be? And it doesn't have to stay hostage to who I was even yesterday. And that's a luxury that we don't get when we're in the middle of that trauma cycle,
Love your answer. Thank you, Michelle. Joanne, how do you begin to separate who you truly are from the identity shaped by your trauma?
Yeah, ditto. I think you just nailed it, Michelle. So maybe I just go into a little experience of my own to try and get how I separated my trauma self, because it took a long time to even know it was trauma. I didn't realize I was carrying all this trauma in my body for like so many years. And here I was doing all this spiritual work, doing all this personal development, like I'm talking 40 years. And it wasn't until I worked with somebody who identified those things as trauma or wounding. And it just like, it was like a light bulb moment. And I just went boom. And then all the memories floated back. And I thought, wow, isn't this fascinating how I have spent my entire life searching for what was wrong with me, doing all this work. What is wrong with me? I should be far further ahead in my life. All the things that were happening for me, which I thought at the time were happening to me, that all stand back from these moments, these trauma moments that I'd pushed down so deeply, I didn't even want to look. And that leads me to like, you need to have safety for that to even be able to deal with it, right? And safety and having the support of someone you trust to be able to navigate and gently massage your way through to finally heal it. So how did I separate from that? Well, when I knew, firstly, when I found that that's what was driving me, that what was running me, that it was I was programmed by this trauma, these experiences that I'd had, that I'd used to think, oh, that was just how life was, right? We brush it off. That's how it was. That's what we got given. That's what we deal with. But had no idea how deeply it was ruining my life to a point, because I wasn't truly living. I was surviving for so long, doing all the work, you know, sitting in the ashrams, bringing in the love, trying to heal something I didn't know was there. I just thought there was something wrong with me. And there's something in that too, because there's nothing wrong with us. But we invest all this time, energy, and money into fixing ourselves, when at the end of the day, there's truly nothing wrong with us. We just didn't know there was all these parts of ourselves that we had not identified as why we were living the way we were living. So from that, separating it was finding my truth, finding out who I truly was at the core of my being, at my soul level. And that's when the work really started. And I'm sure there's going to be lots more to add to that along the way, but I'll leave it there.
Jessie, would you like to tell us, how do you begin to separate who you truly are from the identity shaped by your trauma?
Well, I really like where Joanne was going with the self-awareness, because it's difficult to even start until you start to become aware. Hey, something doesn't feel right here, just intuitively. That's how I always kind of felt, but I didn't know what it meant or how to begin it. And so what made a real difference for me was just a major shift in the way I saw myself and saw my place in the world. And I did that through mythic imagination. So I had always had this idea of the blank slate concept, which is really common here in the States, probably around the Western world, Australia people here, but it's the idea that you come out and you're kind of like nothing, and then everybody puts their imprint on you. And so you become your environment. So if you're in an abusive environment, you become shaped by that, and that defines who you are. But when I started reading ancient myths and I was introduced to some spiritual concepts, it really just lightened my heart so much to think of that I had chosen this life, that I came here from somewhere else with an intention. And these things that I had experienced were things that were going to help me grow and become deeper in my understanding of myself and true love and compassion and all these great gifts that we have from our heart. So I think that's been really powerful in moving me out of, because I was just stuck in the why for so long. That's all I could get to is why. but it helps me to understand, like, it's mystical. I don't need to know why. And it's not really a head thing. It's more of a heart thing, like just an inner knowing when you come into your purpose and you come into what's right for you. And so that's really made a difference to me, is shifting that, understanding some psychological concepts that come up in myths all the time, the ego, that I put on this to protect myself, but is this working for me anymore? That goes back to the curiosity that Brooke and Michelle were talking about. What is this doing for me now? And I can see how this might have helped me when I was 4, but is this something I really want to continue my whole life? And just questioning, is this really true? This thing that I've come to believe from childhood, is this true now? And was it ever true to begin with? Maybe at that time. But so that's helped me, is just kind of having an openness, tapping into just a deeper trust that I am on the path towards something meaningful, and that I can reconnect with who I really am, because that's just part of the human condition. Is we come into this world, we forget why we came, we pick up wounds, and we pick up the right wound that's going to help us overcome it and shine through with our gifts to share with the world. So just these really broad concepts have helped guide me. And then to get out of the past, because I was so caught, like, oh, this happened to me, horrible memories, horrible feeling in my body, in that state of nervous system dysregulation and panic and fear. And what helps me move out of that is to get imagination and creativity, and to look forward, to say, okay, like, I can't do anything about what's happened in the past, but what kind of life can I create for myself? And that's very empowering, and it calms me, and it keeps me out of that regret, the guilt, the idea that Jonah was talking about, what's wrong with me, and the why. Because, like, that's my biggest thing, is the why. So I can, whenever I start to go there, I'm just like, okay, time to regulate, because that's my sign that, hey, I'm going somewhere I don't want to go in my mind and in my body. So I hope that helps.
Definitely beautiful answer. I know for me, how I separated from the identity of my trauma self versus myself now was boundaries. One of the biggest thing, boundaries. And the very first thing that helped me, and Brooke and I have had this conversation, was RTT hypnotherapy. That one session that I had did more than 32 years of therapy. And like you, Joanne, I held on to that trauma for decades, not knowing what's wrong with me. You know, I work at these prestigious corporations. I work for White House appointee, and I was just, nothing was ever enough. And I have less in my life than I've ever had, and I'm happier than I've ever been, because I went through my healing journey, and now I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm not ashamed of who I've been. I'm not ashamed of the decisions I've made. Are there some decisions I wish I could change? Yes, those related to my children, definitely. However, I can't change them. What I can do and what I have done is, moving forward, I've made different decisions, completely different, to where they look at me now like, who's that lady? That's not the mom that raised us. So I separated my trauma self basically by loving and nurturing my inner child, because it was her that was damaged. It was her that would rise up in anger when something was unjust or unfair. It was her that didn't feel seen, heard, loved, or understood. And so I really had to do a lot of inner child work so that I could get to the place to where I could remember who I was, because I knew who I was at 6 years old, but forgot all of that. You know, as you said, Jesse, life and programming and all of that, that's kind of how I did it. And now I know who I am. I know what I'm here to do. And there's not a soul who can tell me anything else. But boundaries played a huge, huge role in my healing, because it's like, no, you're not going to treat me this way. This is the way I deserve to be treated. And if you can't treat me with respect, then you cannot be a part of my life. So that was my little 2 cents in it. So we're going to go on to the next question. Brooke, back to you. What's the most, you know what? We're going to switch it up. Let's play bingo. What are the most overlooked yet essential steps in rebuilding self-trust after betrayal and trauma?
So I really struggled with this one because I relied heavily on my gut instinct. So I didn't really feel like I lost that belief or had any of that self-doubt. But something I did want to touch on from the last question was, I think both Michelle, Joanne, both in different ways sort of talked about that fight or flight response, and yourself in that having boundaries. And sometimes is it that learning what is that overreaction? Well, for me, it was not about the overreaction, because I'd been in danger and been in trauma for so long, I didn't see danger. So it's about what is a healthy response to danger? What is classified as danger? So you know when to react, because if you're reacting, then people are aware that there's a problem. So whilst it may be an overreaction, they're aware that something is wrong. Whereas if I'm not reacting, it's sometimes not as visible to people. So I think that's where I really struggled trying to find that new sense of identity. But as far as building myself after trust and betrayal, I don't know that anything has really changed, because it was that inner belief, because there was so much manipulation around me. It was really, for a very long time, that inner belief and really trusting that gut instinct that I'm okay. I know that this is where I left something and now it's not there, and people were deliberately trying to make me look crazy because it served their agenda. I guess for me, it was maybe just relying on my gut instinct even more so over the last 15 years, and it served me well. So it's something that I really, it just keeps going. Yeah.
Good. Michelle, what are the most overlooked yet essential steps in rebuilding self-trust after betrayal and trauma?
Love this question. I got super excited about it and had to rein myself back in a little bit, because I think trust is that first. I have this system called the bridge of connection, and trust is the first pillar. And when we are not allowed to have degrees of freedom in our environment, the only way we feel a felt sense of trust in our nervous system is when we can predict what the environment is going to ask us to do. If we know how to respond to that from a gut level, like Quinn was talking about, of our own wisdom and knowing, being like, show up this way. It doesn't matter. We mess with that word trust and we put in respect into it and we mix it with this word trustworthiness. Our nervous system really doesn't care about that. It just cares about, can I predict what I'm going to be asked to do? And do I know how to do that as quickly and efficiently as possible with as least repercussions as possible? If I can do that, then my nervous system reorganizes itself, it can calm down. So we don't have cues of safety, even if it's a crazy hot mess of a place. If we can predict that it's a crazy hot mess and we can know what we need to do to survive that crazy hot mess, our whole nervous system flips around and we start to actually feel calm in the crazy hot mess. When we get into calm, when we get into a place with healthy boundaries, with that openness, with that other, that's where our nervous system actually completely dysregulates, because we can't trust it. We can't predict it. We don't know how to show up in that situation because we've been honed like a soldier to survive over here. And so one of the very first stages I had to do was actually like flip that whole polarity back around. Like I didn't need my environment to be predictable. I needed myself to be predictable. Was I willing to turn towards myself? Was I willing to be curious? Was I willing to validate, like, oh yeah, I really did feel the desire to move away there. It doesn't matter if the people around me said that was right. It matters what my own body says. And really starting to honor that inner voice and say, you know what, I'm going to show up for myself. I might still talk myself through, okay, I don't need to react this way, or this was an underreaction, this was an over, whatever that conversation is. Was I willing to show up for that self for myself and not wait for the environment around me to produce that conversation? And that to me is really one of those essentials in building self-trust, because when we're little, the bridge is different. The bridge is we are supposed to look at the giants, the adults, and they're supposed to tell us, this is what's happening, help us sort through our environment, help us understand ourselves. That's their job. So we are designed in our nervous system to look outward first and go off the cues of the world around us. If the world around us is not having our best interests at heart, then we're left with one choice. Is it us or is it them? And survival says, go with it's us. Start breaking down yourself. Start breaking down the different pieces. Start showing up however you have to show up. And hopefully we can hold on, to that core self. But a lot of times, unfortunately, what I've felt for my journey was I could feel that I had to just drop pieces of me. Like in a desert, walking through a desert, I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to get there. Let me drop this piece. This was in my backpack. This is what I loved. But oh well, that's got to go. That's got to go. Piece after piece, I was dropping to just try to make it through this desert of that time frame, however I could. And part of that getting to the other side was being like, oh, I think I want to go back and get that. And I did have one beautiful vision quest where I did. I went back through this desert, found these pieces, these gorgeous, beautiful laughter, child, smiles, smart as a wit little thing, that inner knowing, and gathered them up, right? And so I think that's a huge piece of self-trust, is really giving that to ourselves, saying, I'm going to show up for me, even if my environment around me doesn't. I'm not have to be perfect. And when I realize I've left me, let me just go back and find her. Where is she sitting? Let me go sit back down with her and love her and get curious about how do I bring her back in. Otherwise, if we wait for the original bridge, how we're designed originally, we just keep waiting and we keep waiting and waiting. And then we keep self-betraying because that's how we were originally designed. That's what the child in us is waiting for. But we need to help hold that child and be like, you know what? It's us. We're our healer. We are our own savior. We are, like Jesse was saying, we are the hero and heroine of our story. And it's us. We're the supernatural aid that's coming to our own self and being in place.
I love that. I love that. Brooke, what are the most overlooked yet essential steps in rebuilding self-trust after betrayal and trauma?
Well, thank you, Michelle. I think that you began this, obviously, that was you basically showed us all parts of this, like in a beautiful way. So thank you, first of all. I think I would add to it, coming from maybe a little bit different background than the rest of everybody here. I was told from a young age, I was born in a cult that I was in for 36 years. And that cult programmed me from the beginning that I could not trust myself. So not only did I have that programming and that belief, but I also had that belief from my father. He told me, you can't trust yourself. You can only listen to me. Everything I say is what's the best thing for you. You don't know what's good for you. You don't know what's the best thing for you. And so this messaging that I was receiving as a child, I took that with me, right? I carried that into my next relationships. I carried that into my adult relationships. And then I got into a marriage that I was told the same thing. You don't know what you're talking about. You're stupid. You have no idea, right? So I had all of this messaging my whole entire life of you can't trust yourself. And so when I finally left both the cult and the relationship, I had no idea what it meant to trust myself. In fact, I didn't even know the experience. So talking about what Michelle said, I didn't even know the felt sense of what trusting myself was like in my nervous system. What does it even feel like to trust myself, to actually honor what's coming in right now. And so I like to say to this experience is you have to start with these small micro moments. It's not that, because otherwise I thought about it, I had to do it some big grandiose way. And it really wasn't. It was about creating these small moments of creating this felt sense safety with, I can honor myself. I can say no. I can listen to my body here. Like, so if someone asks me for something or to do something and it doesn't feel good inside, I can say no, or I can walk away, or I can choose something different for myself. And this was a way of honoring myself, of knowing I was doing what's best for myself by making these small, tiny little changes over time. It was choosing myself and choosing what felt right in that very moment. And I didn't question it. And the more that I did that, I said to myself, I don't need to question this. I just know what I feel. And I'm going to honor that. Instead of abandoning myself or my belief or my truth, I'm just going to honor right now what I feel in this very moment. So I didn't make it more complicated. In fact, I needed to simplify it for myself. I needed to simplify it because I was so traumatized. I needed to break it down. I like to call it like, have you ever seen those books? It's like How to Do This for Dummies. That's what I feel like this is what this is about, right? It's about being able to simplify the process, because when you're in your trauma, when you don't know, when you self-doubt so much, your brain is exhausted and you're going a mile a minute and you have all of these ruminating thoughts and it becomes too much. And then when you come in that overwhelm, your nervous system collapses and then you don't know the way out. And then you're back in the darkness, right? You're back in the, I don't know what's next. I don't know if I can trust myself. And then you panic and then it's this horrible, horrible cycle. So I would say start with these small moments. And over time, it's this cumulative change to come back into what you know is self-trust, knowing what you feel is right and that it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. And that's the second part of this. I recognized I was choosing to chase validation. So I was chasing validation from my partner, I was chasing validation from my parents, or I was chasing the validation to them to basically help me say this, yes, you're doing the right thing, or yes, this is the right way. And I'm like, no. When I realized, why am I chasing this? One, most of the people that I was chasing it from were never going to give it to me anyway. I had to see that. I had to see that truth. And then the next one was realizing that I don't need anyone to validate my experience. I don't need anyone to validate me. And I don't need anyone to come to me and say, what you're doing is right, because I know what's right for me. And being able to do that is like coming back into like your ability to really truly love yourself. But also, if you have been betrayed in the past, and this is multi-layer, right? I've had a lot of betrayal in my life. I know what that feels like. I know what betrayal, how it can take you out completely, because it's one of those stories that I heal through RTT for a lot of my clients is, because this happened to me, I'm not enough. They did this because I must not be enough. And it's always that collective theme of that really runs really deep in the subconscious, and you kind of play that out in every area of your life. So it's about rewiring that belief to know that, you know what, just because the betrayal happened doesn't mean that you're not enough. It just means that this is all about them. And your job is just to remember that no matter what happened outside of your outside of your life, everything external has nothing to do with you.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Jesse, what are the most overlooked yet essential steps in rebuilding self-trust after betrayal and trauma?
Okay, for me, it all had to start with awareness. So, like I said, I started becoming aware of how I was feeling and just kind of questioning, like, is this okay? Could I feel better? Maybe this isn't normal. Maybe I shouldn't be sick and nervous and talking down to myself every day in this state of just like really discomfort and misery, really. And so, accept that I was feeling that way was one step, because I was always just tough, just push through no matter what. And that was not working for me. I was in addiction. Something had to change. I couldn't deal with how my life was looking anymore. And So once I came into that, then I started working on acceptance. Like I said, I tend to get stuck in the why. Like I want to analyze things and judge them and understand them, break them down that way. But acceptance helps me out of that. It's just like we talked about in the beginning, like it just is. So that is a nice place for me to be, to start to work with anything, to get out of why it happened, assign blame to myself, to someone else. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. It's happened. And then I started working with my intuition more, which has been the thread throughout this whole panel, just so important and so powerful, because it's like, okay, great, I'm aware of it, I accept that it happened, but what do I do? How do I change this wiring, this identity I've taken on, these beliefs I had that I've just hammered into myself for decades, and these habits too, like with the addiction. I don't have any means to emotionally regulate, to cope, to just handle life, to function. And so I came back to my intuition. Fortunately, it was with me throughout the whole time. I really always had it, but I would stuff it down and say, no, you're not supposed to, because I also was trained to not listen to that voice. And so I let that voice come out and guide me, because I had no idea what to do. I knew I didn't for myself. Everyone's different. I didn't really want to go the professional route. I'm very private. Like I said, I have that push through kind of mentality. So it's just too much for me to ask for a lot of help outside of myself. And intuition helped me with these little things. The ideas would just come to me. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to try that. And then I would, lo and behold, I would feel better. Very basic things too. Like coming out of addiction, it's like every time I had a craving, I would just drink water and my anxiety just vanished. I was like, it's really the simple as staying hydrated. Wow. And that didn't come from my mind or, a doctor. That just came to me. So intuition is kind of, it's really hard to describe, but it's just a feeling of what feels light for me. So I know when something feels light. Sometimes I'm scared. There's resistance. I'm like, I don't want to do that, but something in me keeps pulling me that direction. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go for it, even though I'm scared. And then things turn out beautifully. And then on the flip side of that, it's like sometimes things don't feel right. And someone's telling me like, you should do this, you should do that. I'm like, it's heavy. There's just like something in me that's like wants to go or not. And so that's how I've been able to navigate coming out of these habits, changing my beliefs. And I think a big component is release as well. Like I said, I really had to get out of my head because it's so repetitive, and it has this job. It wants to help us survive. And to do that, it's going to organize, it's going to plan, it's going to judge, it's going to do all those things. But if you stay there all the time, you're going to lose your mind. It's going to take such a toll on your health. So it's really important for me to get out of that space, connect to my heart. And I do that through many ways. Like one of them is meditation, which was not easy at all in the beginning. It was horrible, absolutely horrible, but it really, really helped me to become more aware of what I was thinking, what I needed, and what steps I needed to take to start to heal. And a big release too has been somatic release too. So that's what I'm saying. You don't need to think about it. You don't need to understand it. You don't need to plan it. You can release some of this trauma because it's stored in the body. It's not the way it is. And so if you're able to release it through, I used yoga, breath work, and just ritual, just having an intentional ritual. You're like, I'm going to let this go, can be very powerful. And it's helpful too to have, like I said, I've been isolated, but really my biggest healing moments have been through connecting with others in solidarity in a community. And so I'm very grateful for that I found those communities in my own way. And it was scary because I was like, yoga, like I'm from the Midwest. I was like, no way. But my intuition was like, I want to check out this class. And I learned about meditation. It changed my life. So I think that's kind of a summary of what steps I took for healing.
Love it. Love it. Joanne, what are the most overlooked yet essential steps in rebuilding self-trust after betrayal and trauma?
Yeah, I love everything that you all shared. I was listening and I had to step out for a moment, but just that piece around that inner guidance, that inner intuition that Jess is talking about is such a key, isn't it? To really reconnect with that trust, going in and doing the inner work, right? Doing the things that are going to make the most difference, finding the beliefs that Brooke talked about and Jessie talked about, the limiting beliefs that we learned, that we, I guess, assumed as truth, but at the time, because of the evidence was showing that. But was it true for us? And questioning that. at the soul level, right? What is true for me? Like, I'm an adult now, so what is the truth around that? And learning to trust through the inner guidance is the big piece for me. Just really feeling into the body's wisdom. Like, it has so much wisdom. My very first healing experience work was with Louise Hay, right? And like Jess touched on, eventually, if we don't get in touch with these experiences, these feelings, these what's happening for us in our body, then they'll show up in a way that's it's going to be not so pretty. My mum passed away at age 61 in the back of an ambulance, and I could see her life just like a book, and why she ended up in that ambulance because of all the stress, all the hardship, all the trauma, all the wounding, all the betrayal, all the things that she struggled with that crippled her body, just like withered away. And for me, that was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to go down that path. It was a pivotal moment when she went, that I'm going to use this to help other women not have to experience what she did. And I started there, and it changed my life, just that little book. And at that time, so I feel like building this toolbox of tools that you can pull on in any given moment, because I don't think there's one thing that specifically, there could be. I mean, if you've got your one thing, yeah, definitely. I've done everything. I've tried everything looking for what was wrong until I found nothing was wrong. It was just a piece of me I hadn't connected, parts of me I hadn't actually seen and connected the dots to why I was experiencing what I was experiencing in my life. So really building that toolbox and having your miracle morning, giving that self-love, that self-trust to yourself, building that self-trust through self-love, looking in the mirror, saying you are worthy, you are incredible, you are powerful beyond. There's something in that, really relearning how to love at that deep level. And yeah, so yeah, that's my little piece there.
I love it. I want to touch on something Michelle said, because it's something that I refer to when I'm coaching, and I always tell my clients, you've got a backpack full of bricks, and we've got to unpack them one at a time. And as we work, it's going to get lighter and lighter. And one day you're going to realize, hey, that backpack, it doesn't even exist anymore. Yes, we have the challenges of everyday life, but that backpack is gone now. I'm not carrying this weight around with me. Like I said, what was life altering for me was that RTT hypnotherapy session where I was guided back even to my soul contract. And she asked me why I signed it. And she took me back to different stages in my life, the ages of the trauma, and taught me to hold her hand and to love her. And that's why I do so much inner child work, because I got to go back and tell little Tywanah that she wasn't damaged goods, and she wasn't stupid, and she wasn't crazy, and she wasn't bad and horrible, and all of these other things that I was taught to believe. Worthless. I remember I took a weird journey, was in a toxic relationship, and it was the second most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me, next to my father's abuse. And I did try to end my life. And so I remember thinking to myself while I was committing this act, I'm just so worthless. I'm taking up space that somebody who's amazing and bright and beautiful can take up. And I used to black out my mirrors or put something up because I just hated myself so much, because I believed what they told me about myself. And after going on my healing journey, it's like, oh, heck no, I love myself. And to touch on what you said, Joanne, one of the things that is mandatory in my coaching program, your first assignment is to listen to this song called I Am Worthy. And it really, really, when you sit and listen, because you know how we know music, but when we intentionally sit and listen, it's different. And so, like, Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror, it's different. So that's one of the assignments. It's mandatory. And you have to listen to this song and check in your body. Where do you feel discomfort? And what lie is it telling you? Because you are worthy. And we are worthy. And there's not one person out there that isn't worthy of love, acceptance, compassion, and all of those things. And so for me, like I said, the RTT hypnotherapy, game changer. Game changer. I would be a multimillionaire if I could go back and get all the money I spent in traditional talk therapy back. And I would give it, just donate it to the hypnotherapist, because taking me back to each version of Tywanah and telling her, I love you. It changed my life. It made me want to be better. It made me want to heal. It made me stop believing that I'm damaged goods, which is what the New York City group home system ingrains in us. You're damaged goods. And you were talking about how you watched your mom transition. My mom transitioned at 59 years old, and I was by her bedside, and I watched her take her last breath, and that stuck with me. So not only did I believe I wasn't worthy, but then I believed I had no soul, because it was gone. Once she left, it was gone. So that was another trauma added on top, even though it's not meant to be a trauma, watching your parents slip away. So we're going to get into the last question, because we are at almost time. And so, Brooke, how does unhealed trauma show up in our daily lives, and what are the warning signs that we are still carrying it? Ooh.
Yeah, that's a big one. Honestly, it's the triggers. It's our triggers. And that's our greatest teacher. And a lot of us will run from our triggers, will dissociate from our triggers, we will numb our triggers, we will do anything but deal with them, right? We'll social media way or out of it. We'll do whatever we can to not actually sit with what is happening in the moment. And I'm guilty too. So everybody does it. We all do it. It is part of our brain's beautiful job, is to make us comfortable. And that is uncomfortable to sit with us, sit with ourselves, sit in the emotions, sit in the sadness, sit what comes up. But it happens in the everyday little moments. Oh, maybe it's your partner does or says something and it triggers a feeling or a response in you. And maybe you overreact. Maybe you lash out. Maybe you get really angry, right? Or maybe something happens and it makes you feel like you can't speak your truth, or you got to stay quiet. Oh, these are all just reactions from the past versions of you that you had to be in order to stay safe, to be able to survive. But it's just noticing these moments and these things that come up. And these things, even though I've been on the healing journey for some time, I still am pretty freshly here. I've only been on the healing journey for about 8 years. So I would say I'm probably more of a baby here, maybe, I don't know, than everybody else. Maybe you've been doing it longer. But still, those things are still happening for me, right? But now it's about having enough awareness to see, okay, I just got to sit here for a second rather than going to run and busy myself. I used to go and like mad clean, or I would used to go and do something like just to distract myself enough so I didn't have to deal with, like, I didn't want to face the fear. I didn't want to face the sadness. I didn't want to sit with my grief. And I just realized what I was doing was I was keeping myself stuck. So what was just about sitting with it, being present with it, feeling it, even if it does feel heavy, even if I did need to cry. And even if it was some of the feelings from the past, I just knew this was a part of me that still needed some love, still needed some acknowledgement, some presence, the ability just to sit and be present with it. And the more that I've done that, the less loud, I guess, those triggers have been, right? The more that I've been able to have the ability to slow down when those things happen and have that awareness to do that. And just even have the second to stop and challenge myself and choose differently than I would have been in the past. And that's just those slow micro moments that I was talking about before of doing these things. It's just a practice. Doesn't happen overnight. It's just continuing to build that muscle, like going to the gym. Oh, you don't get those beautiful chiseled muscles overnight. This is about just doing this on the regular. You're chiseling yourself, your true self, right? You're like getting rid of all of the things, the excess stuff that you don't need anymore. And then you're going to be this more refined version of you.
Love it. Jesse, how does unhealed trauma show up in our daily lives, and what are the warning signs that we are still carrying it?
Well, I'm definitely still healing, and I think that helps to normalize that we're gonna have the scar. The wound gets a little bit better, but we got the scars and they can open again. And I think that's been helpful for to me to not try to be like done and perfect, because then we're dead. It's like it's the end. And I try to see it more as exciting and adventure and be curious, like, ooh, that was interesting. What happened there? And distraction is my go-to for sure. Just like Rick was talking about, I can tell immediately when I'm avoiding something because I get really fixated and I'm just like trying to tune out. And I'm like, okay, something's going on here. Let's slow down. And what really helps me get out of that state is tapping into self-love, speaking very kindly to myself, being very gentle with myself. I'm kind of taking on this thing. So I'm a newish mother. My baby's 2 years old now. She's getting big, but she's really helped me understand what it is to be a mother. And I try to treat myself the way that I treat her. So I'm very patient with myself. I'm very gentle with myself. I calm myself, reassure myself, hey, this is tough. We're going to get through this. And that's what brings me back to me, to get out of that state, to overcome the trigger. And it's been really, really helpful for me. So that's where I'm at.
Oh my God, I love that. That is so sweet. I love it. Michelle, how does unhealed trauma show up in our daily lives, and what are the warning signs that we are still carrying it?
Yeah, I think that everyone's pretty much said it. It's in those everyday moments. If we can really, when I stopped trying to fix myself and I figured out what Joanne figured out, and I was like, wow, I'm actually more dissociative, more like perfection oriented, more down a rabbit hole with this whole perfectioning myself up. Then I was like, this is not helpful. I'm taking all these beautiful teachings and all these beautiful things, and I'm tying myself into a pretzel and like literally reproducing the stuff that created this in the first place, just with nice, pretty language. And so then I finally figured out that seeker's promise, which is that if I can show up in my life every day, my life really does. I love the quote by Mary O'Malley, who's a spiritual teacher and out there. And she says that life is set up to bring up that which is bound up so that we can free it up, so that we can be in love and in our life. And once I embraced that, I was like, I don't have to do anything. It's not about fixing. It's not about doing anything. It's about living my life with this awareness, with this acceptance, with this willingness to have a space open for that flash, for that moment of, wow, that's not my voice that just said whatever I just said, or I disagreed to something that why, and my head's shaking no, but yet yes comes out of my mouth, or I really want to say yes, but something was holding me back. Like all I have to do is have this beautiful place for that part of me to show up and to be curious and to have a conversation with her and to let her bring the little Michelles and the little this and the little that. And all of a sudden, I don't have to look for the work. The holy work starts, which is my daily life. And if I can bring that presence to this, then that brings that presence to everybody I'm interacting with, and giving permission to them and giving exit ramps for them to find a way through those triggers like Rick and Jesse were talking about. And then when I find myself distracting, self-sabotaging, doing the things that we all do, because again, that's the brain's job, I have a place, a beautiful sacred place to do what I call that deep bow, and to love it, and to just like smile. And I almost kind of giggle when I find them now. I'm like, oh, sugar glimmer, they're the same thing. They are really the same. And I've started to realize that I had more protectors around glimmers, around positive things, than I did even like negative. And that was really fascinating to me, because I was like, oh, I actually have a more problem with joy, happiness, laughter, like these beautiful things that are in my life than I could work with the grit. I could get in there, and it was like, can I engage this expansion part of my life? And so yeah, so that's kind of, I think it's always there. I don't think there is. If somebody tells me they're healed, I would say walk away, because it's more of when it is time for that to be healed, the opportunity for it to be honored will be there. The question is, have we done the work to create the space to be able to engage it, to connect, to move towards it, like Brooke was saying, instead of away from it? That's where our practices come in. So we can have, like Jim Curtin is a teacher through the Carolyn May School, and he's passed away now, but he always said that we do our practices so that we're able to be in like grace accident, like we do the practices to set us up so that we can fall into the grace moments when they're there. And that's my gift to people when they say, how can I help myself? Like, just do your practices so that you can be spiritually grace accident prone, because that's a good thing.
Love it, love it. Joanne, how does unhealed trauma show up in our daily lives, and what are the warning signs that we're still carrying it?
Oh my goodness. Again, in a nutshell, women are so wise before your years. I wish I was that wise back then. But the triggers was the first thing that came to me, just the triggers. How am I reacting in this moment? How am I feeling in this moment? Rather than, I guess, the awareness piece around, am I responding or am I reacting? How's it feeling in my body? Our behaviors is another piece, like Michelle was just talking about, how we are showing up in our life, in our work. Are we in avoidance of stepping into our fully powerful selves? Are we people pleasing? Things that don't serve us are indicators or warning signs, if you like, that there's something to look at, there's something to see. And again, with curiosity, as Jess says, because the more, like for me, the more I found these things, the more I would shame myself, the more I beat myself up. I would guilt myself for being that way prior to knowing what was driving me, and then working with the parts of me, that the child within, that didn't feel heard, that didn't feel valued, that didn't, all the things we just talked about, but finding those pieces, but also making the time to work with them. I think these days people are so busy doing in avoidance to look at what really needs to be seen, to be healed. So noticing what you're not noticing in your daily lives is probably the key, and going, wow, making that time and space to just sit in, even if it's a moment, doesn't have to take a long time, just to be curious. What is that about, right? Interesting, fascinating, in fact, right? That whole fascination of going in there like, ooh, like a little child at Christmas, and let's find out what this is about. And in those moments, you can truly heal those parts of ourselves and know that they're probably going to be there. They're always there. Some of them are so deep, but we have a different response to them because we've learned to love them anyway and bring them in as the adult self, right? And integrating it from that space, like taking the child's hand and bringing her to the party. I've got you. You're safe now. Telling yourself all the things. And safety is everything, isn't it? It's one of the top human needs. We need to feel safe for us to thrive. So working with what comes up in that moment so that you can continue on doing the great work that you're doing in the world and be able to relate to the people that you're working with, like all of you women here, right? We get it. We understand it. We've been through it. And it's possible. So support is a real key too. Even if you're a private person like I was too, Jessie, it was hard for me to ask for support. I was like, I don't want people to know my stuff. But yeah, that's an indicator, isn't it? In itself, there's something to heal when we can't ask for help. So yeah, triggers and behaviors and working with them. Beautiful, beautiful work. Thank you. Oh, that just took me to thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. When those things came up, that became my mantra. Yeah, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. Quinn, how does unhealed trauma show up in our daily lives, and what are the warning signs that we are still carrying it?
I definitely think the warning signs are the triggers and recognizing the triggers, but it's also something that you touched on earlier, which is illness. If you've got that much going on in your life and it festers within and you end up not well. So yeah, I feel like for me, I'm still very much in a place of has
Okay.
occurred.
Oh, okay. Okay, there you are.
Yeah.
You had frozen for a moment. So do you mind repeating that statement, please?
Yeah, just saying that I'm very much in a state of trying to get justice. So for me, I don't necessarily know that I will feel safe until such time as that has occurred, because there's been so much corruption that the negligence and the not doing anything from authorities' perspective has allowed it to continue for such a long time. So my concern is, of course, if it's not dealt with, then it will continue to go on indefinitely. How does it show up in my daily life? It shows up consistently because I feel like I've got a target on my back. So it is quite a difficult space to be in when you're trying to move forward and move into that healing journey, but you're still very much in a state of chaos. Yeah, it is definitely a space to navigate and try and do what you can to recognize the triggers and do what you can to also move past them.
For me, when I'm triggered, I have learned to step aside and say, okay, what caused this trigger? And is this something that I need to give myself permission to sit for 2 hours with, and then we're gonna write it out in the journal and move on? Do I need to dance it out? Is it something that's stuck in a chakra or somewhere in an energy center in my body? Do I need some form of nourishment or something comforting? And for me, I love like soft things. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'll put on a onesie. I have a Disney onesie and I put it on, and it's what do I need in this moment to get back into my nervous system. But I always give myself that permission to feel it. I never stuff it anymore. We're not taking it out on people. In fact, I will withdraw and say, hey, you know what? I'm in a funky space right now, and I really don't want that energy to be passed on to you. So give me a little bit. I'll get right back to you and allow myself to feel it, because for my whole life, I wasn't allowed to feel. So for me, it's giving myself that permission, the grace, the comfort in knowing that this isn't going to last forever. These feelings are temporary. It's just now coming up, and we're going to validate ourselves, and then we're going to move on, because what we're not going to do is get into victim mentality. And that's kind of the way that I handle it for myself. Only
Yeah.
speaking.
So I think part of it too is, for me, taking my power back is I'm needing to expose that truth, and in the process of putting together a docudrama, because my background is film and television. So then I guess for me, when you're talking about going into that space and allowing yourself to feel it, part of that for me is taking that power back and being able to then do what I can to work on that film and go onto the Facebook page and do the advertising and look at the fundraising campaign, or look at the locations and what can I do to move this forward, so that I feel like once the truth is exposed, then I will have that safe space. So yeah, it's recognizing it, but then being able to take control and take that power back.
Amazing. Well, ladies, we are done for the evening. We had a fabulous discussion. I hope that every woman gets to see this. Every woman that's been traumatized or abused gets to see our discussion. We are never fully healed, even when we leave this earth. We just learn how to cope with different strategies. So everyone's links will be at the bottom of the video once it's sent out. And so if you'd like to contact any of these beautiful, beautiful panelists that we've had tonight, please get in touch with them to work with them. They are all amazing. I have had such an honor and a privilege to share this space with you all tonight. I loved your responses, and we are good. So if each lady could give one word, I'll give you two words. Okay, because one is kind of hard, but I'll give you two words to a woman that is hurting right now from trauma and abuse and is stuck. What would they be? Jessie.
Resilience.
Love it. Michelle.
Be a contraction. You're beautiful. So it's like, you
Love
are
it.
beautiful.
Love it. Love it. Brooke.
Choose yourself.
Ooh, good one. Joanne.
Reach out.
Ooh, another good one. Quinn.
Intuition and resilience.
Love it. And mine would be say no. So everyone, that is the end of our program tonight. Again, every one of these beautiful women's links will be at the bottom of the video. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Can I just pop in here for one moment before we finish to let everybody know that if you want more of what we offer in the Sacred You community, it's a beautiful space. Soulful connections, as you saw today, our live. We have weekly connections with different hosts, and I know Tywanah is one of the beautiful hosts in the Sacred You community, where you can discover more about yourself and your hidden abilities and the depths of your spiritual path, and really go deep and learn from and be part of the community. We'd love to invite you to come along and be a part of that and experience these connections. We're about to start some beautiful wisdom circles as well. So that's going to be amazing. And you can join us for 14 days. You can join for free and check out all of the beautiful tribe and connections that we offer in the community, and the panel discussions. You can be a part of that as well. So the links will also be in the comments below. So thank you so much, everyone, Tywanah, for hosting, and all the beautiful women here. Sending you so much love.
And thank you, Joanne, for mentioning that. I really appreciate you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye.